welcome to Fish on Fridays. I'm McCauley, and today I want to talk about one of the most mysterious, one of the most enigmatic characters in the whole New Testament. But he's listed and mentioned in all four Gospels. We just know very little about him outside of his reference in the Gospel story. And I'm talking about a man named Barabbas. Now, I'm filming this episode just as we knock on the door of Holy Week, and we're getting ready for the Triduum, the celebration of Holy Thursday, Good Friday, and Easter. And so Barabbas is going to be one of those characters that we're going to hear about on Palm Sunday and again on Good Friday, because he's mentioned in all four Gospels. And even though he's very mysterious, we do get a little glimpse of him in the four Gospels. And I want to talk a little bit about him, not just as a real person, but also kind of metaphorically, what he means to us as Christians living today, 2,000 years removed from the crucifixion of Christ. And all of this fascination, at least on my end, started with a quote I saw recently online. And I can't attribute it to anybody because it was just put out there and I don't know who said it. But the quote is, the gist of it is this: the crowd chose Barabbas not because they loved him, but because they hated the truth. And I think it's very interesting to think about that. We should all know the story of Barabbas by now, I'm sure. Christ is arrested, he's scourged, and Pilate is looking for a way, I think, to let him go free. He certainly doesn't want him to be crucified. I think that's apparent because he doesn't believe whatever Jesus is accused of, it doesn't warrant the death penalty. And so he calls upon this custom that the Jews have where he can set free a prisoner to them during Passover. And he gives them a choice between Jesus and Barabbas. And as we all know, the crowd shouts, "Crucify him. We want Barabbas." And so they free Barabbas, and Jesus is led to his death. Now, the enigmatic part of this man is before and after, we know nothing about him. And even though he's mentioned in all four of the Gospels, he's mentioned a little bit differently. I mean, we know he's a convicted criminal. We know he's done bad things, but we don't know exactly what they are. If you read the four Gospels, in Matthew's Gospel, he's called a notorious prisoner. In Mark's and Luke's Gospel, he's both accused of the same things in both those Gospels. He's accused of insurrection and murder, while John's Gospel refers to him as a robber. Regardless of what his crime was, clearly it was something serious enough to get him in trouble, to get him convicted, and the death penalty. But again, he was freed. Now, this is where it becomes a little bit metaphorical. The name Barabbas in Aramaic comes from two words, Bar Abba, which means son of the Father. And I think it's fascinating because Christ, as he's going through his mission work, as he's going through his ministry, his public ministry, he is known as the Son of the Father. And so the people have a choice in front of them. When Pilate says, "I will release one of these prisoners," do you want the Son of the Father, Jesus, the Son of God the Father, or do you want this man whose name happens to mean Son of the Father? And of course, what does the crowd do? They choose the wrong Son of the Father. And the rest, as they say, is history. But it's interesting because the crowd has a choice, and by extension, so do we. We have a choice every day to follow Christ. And I would say it's a choice we have to make every day. Do we want to choose love or do we want to choose violence? Do we want to choose peace or do we want to choose hatred? I mean, those are really the stark differences between these two men. And going back to the quote I said at the beginning, oftentimes we don't choose something because we love it, but because we hate the other. We hate the truth. We hate being reminded of our sin, of our shame, of our guilt. And so we choose an easy path, perhaps. But this is a choice we have to make every day as Christians. Is it a direct choice, or is it kind of just handed to us? This is something we have to deal with. The other part of this story with Barabbas, and by the way, like I said, we know nothing about him afterwards. He went free. We have no idea if he committed more crimes. We have no idea if he lived the straight and narrow path. There was a movie made about him in 1961 starring Anthony Quinn, and that's all fiction. We don't know anything that happened to him. In a way, I like to think that he went up, changed his ways and he came to Christ, but no one knows. But the other part of this, metaphorically, I'd like you to think about how Barabbas was guilty. He was clearly guilty. And yet Christ took on his shame. Christ took on his suffering and died for him, if you will. And that's what happens to us. We're guilty before God, but Jesus died for all of us. And so there's no condemnation. Paul says this in his letter to the Romans, chapter 8, verse 1. He says there's no condemnation if you live in Christ. If you are free with no condemnation if you live in Christ. And I think, wow, what a gift that is, that Jesus is, as we approach this Holy Week, to be mindful of that. The idea of choosing the correct Son of the Father, of course, and how we live our lives daily, but also to be aware of the sacrifice, how Christ stepped in for you and me in our sinfulness, much as he did for Barabbas, to save us. So that's Barabbas. Enigmatic, not much you could say about him, but boy, a lot to learn in terms of how we live our Christian faith even today. So thanks for tuning in. I hope this has been helpful. Please feel free to share this content if you'd like to. We'd love it if you would follow us on Facebook, subscribe to our YouTube channel. But either way, please keep tuning in every Friday for Fish on Fridays. Until next time, please be good to each other, and God bless.